I now call the Powhatan County Planning Commission meeting to order. Mr. Van Gelder will lead us in the invocation.
Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance and direction in our collective effort to be good stewards of the public trust, to make fair and wise decisions, and to keep Powhatan a wonderful place to live and work. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Any administrative items you would like to go over?
Just the draft 2018 meeting schedule. If you'd like to take a look at that and see if you have any comments, that's on page 3 of your packet. So with the exception of a couple dates noted here, the rest would all fall on the first Tuesday. The ones that would not are November. That regular meeting would fall on Election Day, which we ran into this year. And then January would be New Year's Day, so moving that out a week. Then just made a note, July 3rd, that's the first Tuesday, that's fine. That is the day before 4th of July, so I don't know if anybody goes up.
Weekend, so.
Correct,
Yeah.
so yeah, as long as we're all available, then that's fine. And then September 4th would be the next day after the long Labor Day weekend. So again, offices will be open, we'll be back, but if anybody thinks it might be a long vacation or weekend, something, then
We might want to think about that.
The only other one I can think of, and I don't know if this isn't a big deal for a lot of people, in April, that falls over spring or Easter vacation for the schools. So I'm okay with it, but I don't know if, okay.
and then the only other one, today, the school board requested this room August 7th for a meeting. So they got to it first, so if possible, looking to move that one either the 6th, 8th, or the next week being the 14th.
Why would they get the first Tuesday when it belongs to us?
Well, yeah, that's a little like, that's a little insulting. It's been our meeting schedule for like 20 years.
Yeah, I can, if we want to stick with that, then I can let Public Works, who handles that scheduling,
Exactly,
let
get
them
that in
know
the
that
dust up.
this is-
Let's stick with that.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll relay that news.
Okay, cool.
Good note.
Outside of that, I mean, we've traditionally had that meeting the day after Labor Day. Hasn't been a problem. I mean, kids are back in school and stuff. I think we're okay.
Labor Day,
Yeah. Cool.
And do we need to change the November meeting?
Yes, that
No,
one
no.
will be bumped to the 13th.
We already have.
Yeah.
I mean, but any big election going on the first Tuesday?
Yeah.
What?
Election Day in general.
Yeah, but what's the big deal? I mean, it's not a big day, big election day for the county. Cause we have had that meeting on that first Tuesday. I have a conflict on the second Tuesday. But-
Okay.
And,
I'm open to either. I know Mr. Cox prefers
You know,
to
if-
bump
if-
it.
If we don't have anything on the docket, then I have no problems. It's just when we have an election, I have a problem.
yeah, well, the big election the last time, we did it, but
Okay.
because it was all the leeway and all that.
All right, well, let's sort of play that by ear. If we need to bump that, we can. I mean, that's a ways off.
But so
So-
want staff to default to the first Tuesday, and then as we get closer.
Exactly. If it looks like it's going to be a heavy caseload, let's bump it to the second Tuesday. Does that sound fair
Sounds
enough?
great to me.
All right. Okay. Outside of that, are we good?
And if anybody goes back and looks at your schedule and has a conflict, just let me know between now and the next meeting, so we'll bring this back for you to
Right, we'll be
actually
voting on
adopt,
it
so.
formally in February. Okay. We did that. Approve the December 5th meeting minutes. Did you guys have a chance to review that, and any questions or comments on those minutes? I move we approve the December 5th Planning Commission meeting minutes. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll now have the public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on anything that is not on tonight's agenda, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Archie Goodwin here. I just wanted to mention this. I'm reading the Powhatan today, understanding y'all are considering changing all of the RC zoning.
That will be discussed tonight, so if you hang tight, that'll be the second public hearing.
All right, I'll hold my comments.
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks. Anyone else? Seeing there is no one, I will close the public comment period. Any old business? Okay, moving on to our first public hearing.
Mr. Pompey will present this one.
All right, the first public hearing is for rezoning request 16-06 REZC. Roscoe LLC is requesting approval to rezone tax map 41-64A and a portion of tax map 4168 from residential commercial RC to agricultural 10 A10 to village residential with proffered conditions. The applicant is proposing a residential development on about 7.5 acres with 18 single-family dwellings in the Flat Rock area. The average lot size for these dwellings will be about 1/4 of an acre. Proffered conditions address house size and design, access, open space, utilities, and pedestrian connectivity. The conceptual plan submitted adheres to the intensity and dimensional standards set forth in the VR zoning district, but the design does not exemplify all of the elements listed in the intent of that particular zoning district. It also does not incorporate design features recommended as part of the comprehensive plan, and the proposed mix of uses is not in conformance with the countywide future land use plan. That plan recommends that the property used for Village Center, and again, that's the 2010 comprehensive plan. The Village Center land use designation recommends a mix of uses, both commercial and residential, in a more walkable environment. For these reasons, staff cannot support the current conceptual plan submitted and is recommending deferral to give the applicant additional time to address these issues mentioned previously and to address deficiencies brought up by VDOT in its latest review of the conceptual plan.
Okay, would the applicant care to speak before we have the public hearing on this? And after the public hearing, we'll open this up to questions of staff.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Bill Johns. I'm here tonight representing Roscoe LLC. I'm a local engineer and planner for the past 55 years. First, I'd like to thank your planning staff for all the time and effort that they've spent with us over the past 8 to 10 months to come to the point where we are here tonight. While they have, in their staff report, provided a very thorough report, we feel that they haven't given you the full journey that we've been through for this process. If I could prevail on you to take a few moments and go through that journey to have you understand where we are and why we're asking for what we're asking, I would certainly appreciate it. First, the applicant came in about 8 to 10 months ago and applied for this piece of property to look at doing some commercial development on the front portion of the property on US Route 60. At that time, we were told that we needed to incorporate some additional elements into it to meet the village residential standards. So we looked at adding some townhouses to the back, or either adding some multi-story units that were first floor retail, second floor condos. We presented that to staff. We had 2 4,000 square foot buildings out on Route 60, and then extended back through all the way to Batterson Road with a mix of residential components. We were informed by staff that we needed to look at some other opportunities of mixes of uses to go in with this piece of property. We came back and looked at the possibility of taking the back portion of the property and developing into about 18 to 20 townhouse units, and still having the 2 front pieces attached to the commercial. That met with some discussion and opposition in some staff reports that came back to us, that we needed to look at some other things that blended in with the overall zoning conditions in the Village Residential District. We then went back and had further discussions, came in and submitted a residential layout that stretched all the way through the entire development in an effort to show some open space, to show some other walking paths and some different things that we felt like would meet that spirit and intent. At that meeting, we were encouraged to go from the planning office across the street and look at Scottstown, which we did, and looked at trying to develop something similar to that. We came back, made a presentation for that. Meantime, we had filed an application, and staff was reviewing that application as we moved forward. We were then set to have a public citizens meeting, which we had notified all the adjacent neighbors and established a meeting. At that point, we met with the planning commissioner on site, discussed the project with her, talked about it to see if that was something that she would favor as we move forward. Either at that meeting or a subsequent meeting, we were encouraged to look at maybe a larger project. So we approached the adjacent neighbor, the Mason family property, and asked them if they would be interested in looking at an overall plan to develop something into the village district. If I may, at this point, prevail on you, I have copies here of some of these things, including concept plans that we presented at that meeting. If I think there's enough there for each one. Take a look at that. So we set about trying to pull together this large tract of land, as was suggested to us, to master plan it, to look to have the Mason property incorporated into our zoning case, to incorporate a mixed-use development. As you look at those, you'll see a series of those back towards the back. There are a couple of concept plans that had offices, retail, and open areas, and some of the residential components that we saw at Scottstown. So we moved forward with our citizens meeting. We presented that plan at the citizens meeting. Actually presented both plans as an option, along with the small residential project that we had. That meeting, we had a number of citizens, 8 to 10 adjacent neighbors, who were all very supportive of what we were showing there. Thought it would be a good location for a mixed-use development of that nature and the residential component that we were proposing. So we went back and talked more with the Mason family about entering into this agreement and amending the zoning case to incorporate the master plan and rezoning their property all at the same time. After they did some checking with the county tax assessor's office, they discovered that if they entered into this zoning case, that they would lose the current status of tax exemption that they have there for their farm now, and would immediately have to pay I believe it was a $76,000 fee just as soon as the property was rezoned. So consequently, they decided they didn't want to move forward, but they didn't have any users that you see on the master plan, even though their intent is someday down the road to develop this property into a mixed-use development, since it's in the village residential. So that brings us kind of to where we are today. So in conclusion, I would like for you to think about your new comp plan that you're proposing. This property under that comp plan is considered to be a commerce center that would not allow any residential development. It appears to allow the component of some restaurants and some commercial, some industrial, and some public uses. I've been doing this for a long time, as I stated at the beginning. I encourage you to look to your neighbors who developed their comp plans many, many years ago to Chesterfield, to Henrico, that did exactly what is being proposed in your comp plan to strip out along a major corridor and create a synergy of commercial retail development. What they've discovered, be it good or be it bad, throughout the years, if you go back and look at it now, was what they left out was the residential component. Where we are now is with all the millenniums that are out here in the public now, everybody wants the small place to live, walkability, place that they can not only work, recreate, and live. And what you're seeing right now, if you look at Chesterfield, Westchester Commons, which is right down the road from you, is a large commercial development. Currently, they have 2 proposals in front of them for rezoning to add apartments. There's another piece of property back there that they are in the process of looking at to do townhouses. So they're realizing that there is a component there that's missing. They have a lot of vacant shops in that facility currently. If you go to your neighbors over in Henrico and look at what's going on or has gone on at Short Pump Town Center and the Innsbruck complex, you will see that when they, and again, you know, I go back and I was involved within the Innsbruck complex when we did this massive development for office. At the time, it was probably an appropriate thing to do. Just recently, in the past year, Henrico County has come in and they've rezoned that entire Innsbruck complex to allow 50% of the gross acreage to be residential. It is now being proposed to take the parking lots that are there and convert those parking lots to residential to make a walkable, livable community. You go to Short Pump Town Center and look at Short Pump Town Center, that's probably the last full center that's been developed without residential units. If you look at Short Pump Village adjacent to it, it started like Short Pump Town Center and kind of stymied at a point until they came back and added townhouses and apartments to make that move forward. If you look just west of there to the 2 properties that are under construction right now, you'll see that while they're mixed-use properties, the largest component in each one of them is some residential component. So, that being said, I encourage you to look at your comp plan, incorporate some element of a residential component to it, whether it be apartments or be townhouses or again, these 10,000 square foot small single-family lots that millenniums can live in, be close to where they go work, be close to where they go play, and add that to that and not just strip zone all the way out. With that, I would encourage you to look favorably on what we think, if you look at the concept plans here, is that residential component that is part of a larger 30 to 40 acre tract of land that would incorporate all of those features that you're looking at in your comp plan, plus some residential component. So I'd appreciate your time. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, sir. We'll now have the public hearing regarding this case. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Yes, if you can make come up to the microphone and.
Can I come?
Yes, absolutely.
Good evening, folks. I'm Dick Strauss, and I'm part of Roscoe. And it was my idea to start trying to develop this piece of property. I met with Ms. Carmack sometime in September last year and discussed this project with her. I've never played in a game where the rules changed during the game, and that's kind of what we find ourselves in. We were operating under your comp plan from 2010. The comp plan that you want us to operate under now is the one that you're proposing, and I don't even know if it's been approved yet. but we're being held to the standards that are incorporated in that comp plan. Bill understated the amount of time we've been working on this. This has been in process, started in October 2015. So it's been over 2 years. During that time, I suspect we have given the staff at least 12 and perhaps as many as 15 iterations of layouts, all based on comments that the staff made to us during meetings. And in the meetings, they would make suggestions and say, this isn't acceptable, but if you could incorporate certain aspects, then we could take another look at it. And we continued to come back time after time. The last plan that we presented to you was presented after the final staff comment, which incorporated some comments about VDOT and the requirements for VDOT. Bill Johns and I went out and met with John Philippi at VDOT, and we thought that we had come to an agreement with John Philippi on what was going to be required in order for this project to go forward. We wrote, subsequent to that, we wrote a letter to Andrew and sent him a copy of John Philippi's comments, in which he said, what you've suggested is something we could live with, and I think his exact words were, go for it. So that's what we did. So what we have now is an application for VR zoning, and while I appreciate the fact that you're going to defer it and give us time to meet some of the additional requirements that staff has given us, it appears to me that even if we meet those, if you're going to hold us to the standards that are going to be incorporated in the new comp plan, it becomes an exercise in futility. We've already spent hundreds of hours on this project and thousands of dollars with traffic studies, with the neighborhood meetings, with all the time that's been spent working with staff and taking their time. And I want to say parenthetically that we really appreciate the time that the staff has taken with us. They've been very willing to meet with us whenever we call them and ask them to meet with us and sit down and discuss this project. Look, the purpose of the village residential, as I understood it, was to have a walkable neighborhood that included single-family, detached, and townhouse dwellings that looked like large family homes, that were neighborhoods with pathways, and could be considered to meet all the requirements that you were looking for in terms of having a livable neighborhood, and that's what we were trying to do. The standards of the VR zoning were intended, and I'm reading from this, are intended to encourage traditional style homes that relate to the street with front porches and detached or side or rear loading garages. Our plan met all of that criteria. The VR district shall be located in an area designated village residential by a comprehensive plan, which it does in the 2010 plan that we were operating on, relatively close to village centers or retail and service uses and commerce centers. Our project would be within just a few minutes' walk of the Flat Rock Shopping Center. So it meets that requirement. I could go through this, but you all know what those requirements are, but here's what I want to tell you. We're willing to make the investment to bring water and sewer from Route 60 all the way back to Batterson, which is going to allow more development in that area, because suddenly you have water and sewer availability. And I understand that that facility that Powhatan County has got a lot of money in has been underutilized up to this time. You don't have the kind of hookups that you need to make that a profitable proposition. Here's an opportunity to have water and sewer all the way back to the back end of that property and develop roughly $200,000 worth of tap fees for the water and sewer connections. We're going to build 2 roads into that project that will meet the VDOT specs, and it was called to our attention that we said we were going to build 50-foot roads, and in the last iteration of the plan that we gave Andrew, he pointed out that one part of it only had 40 feet, and that's something that we can take care of and correct. But I think you can understand the frustration that we've gone through over the past 2 years and 3 months of trying to bring a project to Powhatan County that would complement what you all are trying to do. You can talk about commerce, and you can talk about building these retail centers, but folks, you gotta have rooftops. You gotta have some people who are gonna be employed in those buildings and who are gonna use them, and where commerce can be developed. So you can look, Bill has already cited a few examples, and one of the more glaring ones that I thought that he didn't mention was the one down at Cloverleaf Mall, where the Cloverleaf, that big shopping center was. And it went well for a while, but then it sank down and became a blighted area. And it wasn't until the county, Chesterfield County, approved the multi-housing development in that project, they were able to bring it back up again. And it really looks good now, whether you've been down there or not, but it's a great development. You need to consider letting us build some residential homes in this area. Mr. Mason's he's in the audience tonight. I don't know how I haven't had a chance to really delve into what he feels, but I'm pretty sure that he wants to develop his property and that he feels this residential development at the rear of the property would help him as he goes forward to find the people who can work with him to develop the kind of commerce center that you desire to have in that area. So I'd ask you to take a hard look at what we've presented to you and not hold us to the standard of what has not been passed yet. Hold us to the standard that's in place now. That's what we've been working with. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing there is no one, I will close the public hearing. I would like to start off and make a couple comments just right off because I was the planning commissioner that met with these gentlemen. And I think there's probably a little bit of frustration on both sides. Back in September, I was pretty clear when maybe not, I thought I was clear, when I said what the 2010 comp plan has envisioned for a village residential area. And even if you read the description in the 2010 comprehensive plan, it generally applies to large areas of land that could be developed under a unified plan development. And 7 acres is not a large area of land. I do not consider, and I told you more or less, the Tractor Supply to be a village center in the sense that the county was looking to develop it as. You guys subsequently went back and met with Mr. Mason and brought forward a tentative, lovely master plan that I think definitely could have had some traction, something that, staff could have gotten excited about, the planning commission could have. That, like you said, didn't come to fruition because fortunately or unfortunately, you need the, adjacent property owner to, go along with it. So hence, we're back to the original plan that truthfully, for months, we've kind of, yes, you've given different renditions, but at the end of the day, it's still the basic model that you've had for 8 to 10 months. So I think as far as that goes, maybe you tweaked some of the side things in the road, but fundamentally, it was the same development that it had been all along. So I just wanted to clarify some history from at least this planning commissioner's perspective. Do you all have any questions of the applicant or staff?
Just a comment to Mr. Strauss's comment about rooftops and that we need rooftops. The average commute in Powhatan County is 33 minutes, which is longer than the average Virginia commute. What we have, unless you sleep to 9 o'clock, is Route 60 full of people leaving this county because we don't have jobs here. And so I'm sorry, from my standpoint, really doesn't have anything to do with the plan, it's a conceptual thing. We don't need rooftops, we need jobs and businesses, and we have a huge workforce who leaves this county every day to work in Chesterfield, Richmond, and Henrico County. As we put the comp plan together, our recommendation, this is now at the board level, and they'll make a decision about what the comp plan should look like. We did move to try and create more businesses along 60 with residential back behind it because we felt like we needed more jobs. And so there's another way to look at the rooftop argument and discussion. Thank you.
I have a question of staff. What's to be gained by deferring this?
To this point, or up to this point in the process, primarily staff's been working with the applicant. We've given them our feedback. We would certainly welcome feedback from the Planning Commission. And if you all or the applicant think it's worthwhile to spend some time digesting your feedback, then we wanted to allow time for that. Again, staff isn't supporting the application in front of you. Some of the other drafts that brought in commercial elements and more walkable village center amenities and things, those things we have some interest in pursuing if the applicant or the Planning Commission is interested in that. So that would be staff's intent in recommending deferral.
Mr. Pompey, can you just address really quick some of the VDOT issues and kind of walk me through that, just for clarity?
Yeah, so VDOT reviewed the current conceptual plan that's included within the packet, and they had a few comments. One comment is regarding access to Batterson Road, which is classified as a major collector in our major thoroughfare plan. There's an existing private drive on the north side of Batterson Road that goes back to a use that has a lot of truck traffic.
Okay.
So VDOT is interested in having that entrance proposed as part of this development align with that existing private road, so you don't have staggered streets and roads along Batterson Road. Another comment that they had is that the 2011 subdivision street acceptance requirements require 2 connections prior to the subdivision's roads being accepted by VDOT. Right now, the current plan shows 1 connection.
Right.
And then there's some conceptual connections, but they want to make sure, and they being VDOT, they want to ensure that there is actually right-of-way to have a second connection for that development.
And has the applicant shown that there is, in fact, right-of-way to get a second entrance, or no?
On the conceptual plan, it just shows future connection. It doesn't show actual right-of-way, and that kind of leads to another concern from VDOT. On that conceptual plan, you can see where it shows future connections to the south connecting to Route 60.
Right, correct.
VDOT was concerned that those connections, as shown, do they meet the access management requirements of Powhatan County, or would they come out too close together? It was sort of some uncertainty about where those connections would come out.
Okay.
And then,
And he would have to get a right-of-way dedication, because that's not his property, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. So VDOT says there has to be an actual right-of-way dedication, not just a conceptual connection
Okay.
shown. And then on this current conceptual plan, the entrance radii, there's a little curve coming out on Batterson Road from the main entrance. That needs some work to meet VDOT's entrance requirements or their dimensional standards for roads.
Okay. Thank you. Do you all have any other?
I have no other questions.
Okay. This is in my district, and if I was, after 8 to 10 months of different reiterations, I just do not see what deferring this is going to accomplish for another month at this time. I think if the applicant could perhaps come back, like we discussed a while back, with the more comprehensive master plan and get, a larger swath of property where you could do, some real village centers and commercial development with some more mixed use, I think it would be something worth considering. But at this time, I am going to recommend the Planning Commission deny this proposed rezoning. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
the board will see this their next meeting.
Yes.
Well,
If they want,
No,
yes.
at their February meeting,
February meeting.
their next meeting is next week, and
So even though it's a recommendation for denial, the board sees it. The Board of Supervisors will see this in their February meeting.
All right. The next public hearing case that we'll review tonight is case number 18-01-AZ. Powhatan County is requesting a zoning text amendment, which was initiated by the Planning Commission. This amendment would revise the types of uses permitted by right or with a conditional use permit within commercial and mixed-use transition-based districts. Those zoning districts include residential commercial, RC, office, O, general commercial, C, and the Courthouse Square Center zoning district, which is CHSC. Again, the list of permitted and conditional uses will be amended. In addition to those changes to the transition-based district, some uses will be added to the Village Center, VC, and Commerce Center, CC zoning districts. This request was discussed by the Planning Commission at workshops held on September 5th and December 5th of 2017. Some property owners have contacted the Department of Community Development expressing concern with this request, so staff is recommending deferral to allow time for additional public feedback and input. There's one issue that I wanted to draw your attention to, and that is noted on page 64 of the packet, that matrix of uses. In previous versions of the matrix, for particular uses, automotive painting or body shop, automotive repair and servicing, car wash or auto detailing, and tire sales and mounting were incorrectly shown as conditional uses. Those 4 uses were conditional uses until March 27th of this year, when another zoning text amendment was adopted, and it changed those 4 uses from conditional to permitted. So at those previous workshops I mentioned, they were listed as conditional, but they're actually permitted uses. So I don't know if you all wanted to discuss how you classified them, or if that changes how you classified them as part of this zoning text amendment.
Andrew, please, get me to the right page.
Yeah, that's a little.
Last page 64.
This matrix that starts on page 61.
Okay.
There's a note on the very end, it's on the back before the map, and that's the note I'm talking about.
yeah, so basically, the draft we were all working with hadn't yet incorporated the changes that were approved, making those by right. So a lot of these uses, when you saw a C or conditional use, those were a lot of the uses that were removed. So in this instance, we just wanted to bring it to your attention that, again, we can't assume what you would not have done, but wanted to show you that these were actually permitted uses. So when reviewing them before, would you have removed them? Would you have kept them as permitted? Would you have maybe changed them to C? So again, since you
And
were
that's
looking.
for
And
the,
they're asterisks, see them,
Yeah,
they're
if
shown
you-
with an asterisk in the bigger table. So on 61, they've made it easy for you to look down
Okay,
at the uses, and then look across at where they're permitted. where
Okay,
you might have
so-
altered that.
So
okay, cool. So
really-
right now, we would need to make an amendment tonight. If we wanted to make them conditional, we would need to amend this, make it conditional, or whatever it is in RC, correct?
Yeah, so really the only one the staff, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, that we would bring your attention to, the first 3, automotive painting, body shop, repair and servicing, and car washing or other detailing, you were recommending those to stay permitted or go to permitted. So we would recommend that stay the same. It was tire sales and mounting that you had proposed to remove. And again, that may have been based on the fact that what we showed you was a conditional use, when in fact it was already by right. So that's really the only one that we would say take a look at it, and just make sure if you want to remove that, you still want to, but. Just staff recommendation would be, if we're allowing auto sales and servicing by right, tire sales and mounting are kind of subset of that,
that,
rather than
yeah.
a higher separate use, so.
Yeah. Well, we can go back and kind of take a look at this. Anything else, Andrew, on that? All right. Why don't we have the public hearing on this? We can hear from the citizens and then kind of discuss it further. We will now have the public hearing on this zoning ordinance amendment. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Members of the commission, my name is Woody Topher, Powhatan, Virginia. Just want to make sure we understand that you are not changing anything in the A10 district for its uses. I didn't see anything
A10.
written on that.
No changes.
No changes.
I had a couple of questions. I'm trying to figure out how it works. I noticed, I just got this Friday, and I had a chance to really study the whole thing. But I do notice that all banks and all restaurants in Powhatan are non-conforming after you approve this. All shopping centers are non-conforming after you approve this. So if one of the restaurants in one of the shopping centers want to expand, how do they do that? And also, if a bank or a restaurant anywhere wants to expand, how do you go about doing that? On the conditional use permits, we was always under the impression you can't transfer those things. So if I get a conditional use permit for something and then want to sell my business, how do you go about it? You come back and get another use permit for that sale? That was several concerns I had about it, and like Mr. Thomas down there across from the high school, he's got a trucking business, and now he's non-conforming based off what y'all are doing. So if he wants to expand his trucking business, you know, how do you go about doing this? Do you have to rezone everything? Spot zone each individual parcel, or how does that work? That's just the questions I have.
We'll address this in 1 second.
All
You
right.
just can keep asking, I'm writing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Archie Goodwin again. Probably don't need to speak really, since y'all are gonna take more time with it. But what I have a problem with is the residential commercial zoning that I have on some of my property in 3 or 4 different parcels on Route 60. I had it rezoned about 10 years ago to, from agricultural to RC. And now, y'all have changed, if you adopt this, that anything I want to put on that property would have to have a CUP. And what kills me on that is, I have a lot of residential residents that live back behind this Branchway Springs. Most of y'all probably know what I'm talking about. That'll give them a shot at knocking me down. I can't put a bank out there, can't put a doctor's office out there the way I'm reading it, if they object. And it was 27 acres I had rezoned to RC. Paid a lot of taxes on it for 10 years. Nobody was interested in commercial, so I decided to go ahead and do the residential on most all of it. Now they're building houses on it. Well, there's 2 corners left there. One's about 4 acres and the other's about 5 acres, right on Route 60, right on the corner, that I want to do maybe a doctor's office or whatever. But I don't want the people in the neighborhood back there to come up here when you have a conditional use permit hearing and object to it. They knew when they bought the property back in there, it was 27 acres. I could have built apartments and everything else, but I didn't choose to do that. So I want y'all to consider that. I don't know whether such a thing as a grandfathered situation or not, but when you change these rules 10 years after that I paid all that taxes because it was commercial, It's not exactly fair. So that's all I have to say. I'll be glad to meet with y'all some other time, show you the plat and all what I'm talking about. You don't see the plat, you really can't focus on the situation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, staff, I'm Doug Bradbury from Powhatan. If I could, I hope it's not out, I think I'd like to have this conversation more of a dialogue than me standing here giving a speech, if I may.
What'd you say?
Is that,
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed.
I'd rather have a dialogue between you and me than me just babble on like I'm giving you a sermon up here. But mine appears, or my concern, I think, or first concern is in the form of a question. I'll say a twofold question. My first question is, how did this originate? And assuming it originated from the Planning Commission, what are you trying to accomplish?
We'll go into that in a minute. You ask the questions and I will address those
Okay, you jot them
afterwards.
down and I'll file my questions up
Yeah.
there. All right, but those two things, because I'm not sure what it is that we're trying to accomplish here.
Okay.
I had a little time to read through this, and I don't know if I can't read or don't understand what I'm reading, but after I read through this, I'm more confused than ever. Maybe if I read this 6 or 8 more times, I'll know what it is you're trying to accomplish. But the gist of what I see is you're moving most of the uses by right out of by right and shifting them over to a conditional use, which entails another application, another fee, another public hearing, more conditions. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with this or not. I don't think there's anybody up there that submits site plans and goes through this ceremony, just like the previous case, the ordeal that they've been through. And you got a time frame in here of months. Months can turn into a year pretty quickly when you start fooling with a zoning case, especially if there's any controversy to it or any public opposition. It can go on and on and on. And every month and every hour is dollars that's being wasted on this thing. A little earlier, you alluded to the fact that you would like to promote commercial growth in the county, and I know every politician that runs for office, gets up on his soapbox and preaches loud and clear he's going to promote commercial growth in this county, because Mr. Cox just mentioned we need more commercial growth in this county. It's true, we do. If you want to promote commercial growth, this is going exactly in the opposite direction. The more complexities that you impose on an applicant and getting through this entire zoning process, it just ensures that you can't get through it. And I want to give a little history lesson and share a case here with you. Looking at the history side of commercial growth in this county, somewhere back about 1988, the county made the decision to zone a strip of land up and down Route 60 from Route 520. Well, really, I think it started at the county line originally, and then they revised it from 522 to Route 60 on the eastern side. They came up with this residential commercial idea, trying to promote commercial growth in the county. Seems like a good idea. The bulk of that property was agricultural, truly agricultural use, and the majority of it still is. But what ended up happening after they adopted this and went through all of that process, very little change. But the one thing that did change fairly quickly on the rezoning going to the RC district, the taxes increased. The taxes moved from actual use into potential use. And Mr. Goodwin just stated he's been feeding the meter now for about a 10-year period on some trees standing over there on his property that's zoned commercial. And that's true all up and down Route 60. So when you start taking these things away from the property owners, do you also plan on adjusting the tax base to meet what their real use is? Does that make any sense?
Perfect sense.
There was one project I recently worked on, and this is just one example of what I'm talking about. There was one project I worked on. There was a site plan down here on Route 60, and unfortunately it had a road behind it. The county has adopted this access management plan. It sounds real good, when you're going through the ceremony of listening to all of the things this can help you do and that sort of stuff, but it doesn't work like that. What ended up happening with this particular piece of property, the guy wanted to put a restaurant there, right on Route 60, but he had a road behind him, and due to your access management plan, he had to access his project, or the requirement was, he has to enter from the back street, not 60, and he's sitting right there at the crossover. So you drive up a road a half mile, or turn around and come back, and who is going to develop anything like that? And that's the kind of stuff we're constantly dealing with. Right next door to the church, I did the site plan for the church. We wanted to put an access on Skaggs Road. It didn't take me but about, I'm gonna say, 4 or 5 months to get the highway department in the county to approve making a connection to that. Nobody at staff could decide, nobody at the highway department could decide. It's a county ordinance, but the county doesn't have the authority to do it. They have to rely on the highway department. The only way I finally got it approved was I got the chairman of the board of supervisors and the resident engineer to meet me on site, and then it was finally resolved. But this took months to do. And that's the sort of stuff we're constantly dealing with. At any rate, my suggestion to you, before I wear the microphone out here, is you need to work on this real hard and long before you adopt it. We just went through the subdivision ordinances and the zoning ordinance, and as everybody here knows, it's full of errors. You got to do a lot of homework before you adopt these things. At any rate, y'all have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Ben Mason, and I represent Mason LLC. And we, although we weren't applicants to the zoning change we were just talking about, we are very interested in that. And I'm a firm believer, and we need a mixed-use eligibility in the Flat Rock area. And it's my understanding that the zoning you've got here is going to make our property, which is adjacent to the Roscoe property, that is a large property that I think Powhatan lacks, having 30-acre plus parcels in those areas, and we need that. And I think Flat Rock reeks of needing to have a core area, or Anderson Highway will end up being like Midlothian Turnpike is from Cloverleaf Mall to Midlothian, a sprawling commercial area with just no common theme. It'll go up and down, based on the economy and so forth. So if I'm correct, it looks like, along Midlothian Anderson Highway from Flat Rock into the county, the Chesterfield County line, it appears Commerce Center is that strip. It sounds like there would be approval for a village center zoning if we were ready to go. So if it's good now, it probably needs to be good inside this comp plan that gets to be developed. And again, I'm not saying that the whole Anderson Highway needs to be that way, but I think Flat Rock would be a very good core center for us to develop around, create some density, create a unique area that is another town center like Powhatan Courthouse might be. I bring your attention to Newtown Project in Williamsburg. It's been created. Libby Mill Commons in Richmond, it's being developed very nicely. I think we need something like that, so I would ask you all to consider that in your comp plan.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, I'm Michael Potter, 3875 Old Buckingham Road. Just wanted to address some of these changes in terms of make sure that our community stays diverse in uses, and to where we are having to come forward quite specifically when we have some by rights that exist now. With the RCs, I know some of the RCs we were led to go that route in terms of commercial spacing. Also an office, I think you have a bank change possibly that would affect some areas, especially with drive-throughs. The removal of drive-throughs, it's pretty important to a financial institution to have a drive-through, and maybe even just for a most machine. Also, for the courthouse district, I think there was some changes. By right, restaurants would be removed from that, both drive-through and without, but also lodging, or in terms of hotel. We have to keep in mind that those 6 blocks were probably the most, by far had more transient people spend the night 100 years ago than we do in Powhatan today. So let's not get too far off of where we are with the Courthouse Tavern and at one time Scott's Tavern, where the Four Seasons stands today, and the list continues in those 6 blocks. But we do appreciate all that y'all do and the thought that you give to make our community better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm John Rother from Powhatan Courthouse. I spent my entire career working in Powhatan Courthouse, and am basically the author of the fundamental zoning that's suggested to be changed in the courthouse district with this new proposal. And I just want to tell you, I'll be watching it very closely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing there is no one, I will close the public hearing. And I would like to, if you guys, my colleagues don't mind, take a first stab at explaining why we did this and the purpose. When we, it's going to take a second, so bear with me. When we were updating the comprehensive plan, one of the things that we have heard as a community over and over and over again is no one is happy with the way Route 60 looks. No one is happy with the way the course of development's going. We have 2 growth areas, as most of you know, one Flat Rock to Chesterfield, and then basically sort of the village area, as well as 7-Eleven. In those areas, we have Commerce Center, Village Center, Village Residential, as well as RC. RC's been kind of the bugaboo in this community for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it's been, as far as development standards, et cetera. So, and if you read our zoning ordinance, you cannot rezone to a transition district. So, for instance, if you're in the courthouse up in the village, you can't rezone to that old transition district. You're going to have to rezone to a new district. So our objective to doing this and stripping some of these by right uses out is to basically incentivize people to come in for a rezoning. With a rezoning, it's not all bad. In fact, in most cases, you have reduced setbacks, you have a lot more flexibility with your design. Plus, we, the Planning Commission and the board and the community, gets to take a look at actually the design standards and make sure that they are being adhered to, so we don't have this, like the gentleman said, this mismatched design all up and down 60. We are trying desperately to do away from that. So if you are in those core node areas, your property's not going to be, your taxes aren't going to be affected, nothing is going to be affected. Now, that being said, being candid, if you are in that area between Flat Rock in the village, that strip of RC, which is kind of a buffer zone, which the community said they like that. They don't want to see 60 stripped all the way down. Yes, you are going to have more limited uses in there. There's, you know, being honest, your RC is not going to have, you can still go in and do things, but, you know, to Mr. Goodwin's, you know, thing, yes, he probably would have to come into a conditional use permit to, you know, get that approved. That being said, the reason for that is we kind of wanted a quaint village town-like development more so than strip development. So all of this, we do have a method and for the madness of what we're doing. We're not taking your rights away or taking your property rights away, not by any stretch, because you can go back and do in those growth areas more. And the Planning Commission has been working or trying to tell the board, I mean, in these areas that you want to have rezonings, go ahead and try to somehow, you know, preemptively rezone these, or go ahead and reduce the rezoning fee. But that's a side story and you know, a long way down the road. So,
if you look at the comp plan that we proposed to the board, in the 2 growth areas stripped out along 60, it shows commerce. Don't confuse that with the commerce ordinance. It's very different. So in the growth areas, where it shows commerce, what we proposed, if you read the definition of it, is that it include all of the RC uses plus some of the light industrial uses. So it actually expands that district and makes the by right piece of it much larger. The other thing we did with the proposed comprehensive plan, the one that we approved, is we put all of the comp plan on the property lines rather than cutting through the middle of pieces of property. So we tried to make them more contiguous and more understandable. But in the growth districts, not in the gap between it, we're proposing to the board that we expand the by right uses. And so it's very different than the commerce zoning ordinance. Now, whether we will be able to get that approved or not is up to the board. But so where the comprehensive plan says growth, we want to make it easier to grow.
Do y'all want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I echo what you're saying, that, we're trying to listen to what people have said about not having 60 look like Midlothian Turnpike, and I think that was brought up this evening. So we're trying to move forward towards that. And with the rezoning, I think if you look at that in conjunction with that, you'll see that we are expanding things and following a land use plan where we've heard things want to go.
And I reiterate that in those, zones, it's easier to develop, as far as setback requirements, and it's than it currently is with the existing transition zones, so.
Well, I'm gonna speak to Archie. This thing is not unanimous. I'm looking at a chart here, with 1,293 acres in the RC district and only 668 in the commercial district. Now, the RC district, I've been dealing with this thing for years and years and years. And I've told these folks that I wasn't gonna take any rights away from them, and I'm not gonna support taking rights away from them. And I agree with them, in your growth areas, that's fine, but you have this vast area from Flat Rock, which is Rocky Oak Road, all the way to 522 that is not in the growth area, and you're gonna lose some rights. And everybody's been paying taxes on it. He mentioned 80/80 was prior to that. So I sit in all these meetings, and we went through and struck. I wasn't in favor of all of it, but the rest of the planning commissioners are in favor of it, but I'm not.
Mr. Walker, you meant from Rocky Oak to Academy, right?
Rocky Oak to Academy. Yeah.
Okay, not 522.
That's a pretty good stretch.
Yeah, Rocky Oak to Academy.
Pretty good stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, about a mile, 1.2, I think mile and something like that, yeah, about a mile. Yeah, and that's our way of trying to address some of the development concerns that we have heard.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think that was the description. We have a lot of comments about concerns about Route 60 looking like Midlothian, and the current zones are encouraging this highway commercial perpetuation, and that's what we're hearing. So, Mr. Goodwin, your comment about being concerned that residents would come out and oppose you with the CUP, which is ironic because they're sort of your development, your people to begin with, but incentivizing you to change that zone still allows you to do that and more without doing a CUP, without changing your taxes. You're still in a commercial area. So that's where we're trying to make it more suitable for you to have a bank plus other stuff, not have to go through a CUP process, but you will have the difference of having to upgrade your zone in that case, because you're caught in that little strip there. So, but we've heard a lot about it, the rural character, not looking like Midlothian Turnpike. I mean, the Midlothian part of Route 60, and this is part of where we're trying to be a little creative in the future for Route 60 in Powhatan.
In the area from Flat Rock, in particular, to Chesterfield County, in the 2010 comp plan, there's a series of village centers shown. Timmons did a very in-depth study about that whole area. and showed us pretty conclusively why they won't work. And it's a whole combination of things. But as they looked at that entire growth area, the only things they singled out that wouldn't work were the village centers. So
Yeah.
that was another thing that was driving us to look at this in a different way.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That was a comprehensive report that really spurred this. In addition to the Regional Planning District Commission had another sort of section of Route 60 that they looked at, and we read that report as well.
Do you guys want to look at this list again and make a motion tonight? I know they have some asterisks or,
Yeah, and I'm wondering around the courthouse area if we can also clarify that district versus the whole village.
yes.
Some of
So
those comments.
Yeah, yes. So the courthouse, what's the transition district for the actual courthouse is Courthouse Square, but in the comp plan, it is, what's it classified as, just Courthouse Center?
For the future land use
Future land use.
designation, do you recall what
Courthouse.
that designation is?
The CHSC.
That's the
Yeah.
transition one. So that's what what's it called in the comp plan? Because I just want to reiterate to Mr. Potter and Mr. Rother, none of their uses are being stripped out of that. Yeah. Okay, it's village, okay, I'm sorry, it's village center then. Okay, my apologies. So that would be all classified as a village center, and you would have more uses and more flexibility in that by far than you will, you know, or even had in the courthouse square. So, okay. Did that help, Jen?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to, for the RC district, let's tackle real quick what the staff put back in with the permitted uses, automotive painting, repair, and auto washer, auto detailing. Do you want to keep those as permitted, as they recommended, or move it to a CUP?
Going with our other thinking if they would be conditional.
They would be conditional, yes, especially the ones, a high-intensity water use. Mhm. Okay.
So those become
Cs.
C.
Mm-hmm.
Including tire sales.
Okay. Were there any others that you guys looked at, saw, gave you angst? We added the ones, obviously, that were in this into the village centers and commerce center that we talked about. We put those in there, correct? I think we were set.
And then I would just say, given what was made in public comment, does anyone from staff have any other concerns or things that you would want to react to
Looking at,
with non-conforming uses going forward and the nature of those comments?
it would, create additional non-conforming uses. There's some limited ability to expand those. Generally, you can continue them, not expand them to expand them. Mr. Topher asking what would the process be? Generally, if it's a conditional use under the RC or C district or whatever it is, then applying for a conditional use permit to expand. Or if it's not a conditional use, then rezoning to something like CC or VC, where presumably that would be a by right use to then allow your expansion. So that would be the process generally there. The one, I think remaining issue would be with the courthouse district. If somebody were to rezone to CC or VC, these small lots, some of these lots currently with 0 foot setbacks with the CC or VC districts, could be an issue there with the setbacks those require on some of the courthouse lots. If they went to a CCPD or a VCPD, then you get to name your own setbacks, show it part of the conceptual plan. So I think bigger picture, that would be fine. But if just, let's say, one property owner with their single lot wanted to rezone, in good faith, you can't really call that a PD. It's just a single parcel. It's not part of a bigger development. So in that case, probably have to think a little more on how we accommodate that, because they would not be able to, in some of these instances, meet the VC or CC setback.
How about transfers of cups, CUP transfer?
I know that's been something in the past, and I think still currently, we attach the CUP approval to a specific current owner's name, so they could amend that. They would have to amend that for the new ownership, or you know, in the future CUP, the county could choose to not attach that to a specific owner.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and you can weigh in, Kelly, I thought CUPs, even though it shows a name, an actual CUP goes with the land, not the person. It's actually, Tom told me that, and I was like, are you correct on that? Because it surprised me. I thought it really, and he's like, no, it's actually a conditional zoning on the land. You can't give zoning to a person. And that's, maybe I misunderstood him, but from what I gathered, in the case in a court, it's with a property, not a person.
Kelly, do you have a feeling?
Yeah, I think the issue would be if they're continuing the business, if they're changing it at all or something like that. But I think going forward, you could put, just change the language so that it's very clear that it runs with the land, or, you know, we could just tweak the language. Because different counties do, I mean, some counties, they expire, or, so you can tweak them in different ways. So I think maybe just, we'll talk about the language going forward.
Okay.
So if the language can allow it to stay with the property, if it's written for that object?
Right, and we could just, going forward,
Yeah.
tweak it a little bit. I
Or it
think.
could be transferred by administratively transferred.
Yeah, we should, since we have, you know, the board that has approved in the past many conditional use permits tied to specific names, we should probably look at that more
Yeah, I think
comprehensively
that's
with the
the
county
way
attorney.
it's done.
My-
A couple of other county attorneys have said that it's the applicant that gets the conditional use permit.
Not the property.
That's what John Rick said.
I mean, if
Yeah,
there's,
that's what Tom told me, it was property.
Harper before him,
Yeah.
am I not correct, John?
Because his point was, it's a conditional zoning, you know, and it,
Well, conditional zoning is every time we put a condition on our zoning.
correct, but the condition,
Conditional use permit is a different thing.
yeah, but
That's a use permit.
but even with the CUP,
CUP,
You're right,
conditional use.
permit, exactly, that conditional
It goes
use
with
is
the
for the
applicant.
property. I'll make a bet with you, it's for the property.
Well, that's
Okay.
what- that's what previous
and
county attorney
that would be
said.
my experience
Oh, boy.
elsewhere, but since it's been done here like that, tonight, I
Yeah,
don't want
it's,
to say.
your experience is it's with the property.
Correct.
It's with the property, it's not with the applicant. And no, and I can say, because, for instance, take the vet clinic. He could tomorrow leave, and that would still be as a vet clinic, because it's the property. We'll check with Tom.
Isn't this a legal question we're not going to
Yeah, you're
solve
right,
tonight?
you're right, you're right, all right,
I'm just
sorry.
saying, What previous county attorneys had us do.
Yeah,
John Rick, with a guy named Hopper, way back there, and it was always the applicant had the conditional use permit.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
on the zoning, conditional zoning is different. That's on the land.
Isn't the question whether we're going to move this forward? or
let's
whether
move
we're
it
gonna
forward. Are we
defer- Or
good?
whether we're going to defer this?
I am comfortable
the-
moving
the
it
legal-
forward.
legal-
Hey, we go, I'm not gonna support the RC changes.
Okay.
Period.
Okay,
So if you wanna do it all together, I'll have to vote against the whole work.
okay,
So if the
Does that
county
mean-
attorney will say, we do each one separately, that's fine. If we do all of them together, I'm gonna vote against all of them.
Sorry, I was.
Kelly?
Well, I'm going back to, hold on, the top. You're asking if, I mean,
He's fine with doing it in the other transition districts except for the RC. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, is it in that courthouse area where there might be some setback, just different issues? I mean, we might want to defer that courthouse one to look at some of those specific issues because the buildings are up at 0 setbacks. So we can.
But even
see what that's
if we
gonna
keep it
trigger.
as the courthouse square, they can't rezone to it anyway, per the zoning ordinance. You know, they can't do it, in theory. I mean, they could,
We don't
Yeah,
wanna, increase the number of, non-conforming.
right,
And that's what we're doing.
in the courthouse. Then,
Well, overall, in the short term.
We,
Correct?
the whole ordinance change with transition districts was about increasing
non-conforming.
It's
That-
always,
That is the nature of the process. It's not good, it's not bad, but when this county decided it was going down that was an inevitable result.
That's correct.
yeah, I don't think we can get away from that, you know? I mean, and hopefully you get more expansions and people rezone, and then you don't have it non-conforming, but,
That's the avenue.
yeah, that's the avenue. So I don't know, do you want to break it out, or do you want to, it doesn't matter to me.
If you're,
Yeah.
if you're deferring, I think you need to keep it together. Just for, I don't want errors to be made, if trying to parse it out.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I'm kind of, let's lump it all, or none.
How was it listed in the public hearing notice in the paper?
Half a page worth.
Yeah.
Half a page worth.
Each district?
Yeah, each district.
But as one,
One rezoning amendment.
It wasn't,
Right.
it's 1801 AZ.
right, so it is
Yeah.
one. I mean, you could certainly you can make changes if you want to change some of the conditionals to, those you can make and make part of your motion, but it is listed as one, consolidated.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I move the planning commission approve the proposed zoning ordinance amendment as amended tonight. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Any new business?
No new business, but one we didn't touch on about the 2018 meeting schedule. Did we want to talk about workshops for 2018?
Oh,
If we want kind of a placeholder, if we want
Yeah.
to try to do something next month?
Was there a specific day that works for you guys to kind of have, like, you know, the third Tuesday or the, you know, is there any, for me, I'm pretty flexible. So how about you all? I know Jen, yours is,
I think the second week, mine's so erratic,
Yeah.
but the second, when we've done it the second week, I seem to have better luck there.
okay, second week.
I
Meeting
don't
on
care.
Second Tuesday, but
I don't
It's
care.
going to be random for me.
Okay, so second Tuesday maybe?
second
bad for
Tuesday, I
you.
got a month.
Oh,
a
okay.
week meeting.
How about the second Thursday?
What's wrong with Wednesday?
Wednesdays works.
Okay.
I do not have them on Wednesday, occasionally have a board meeting.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I can do most anything. I either can do it or I can't. It doesn't, it's pretty rare.
All right, so if you don't like Wednesday, do you want to do Thursday? Or
Don't leave-
Monday's kind of
Hey,
depressing
Woody,
day to
don't
have a
leave.
meeting. Let's not do Monday.
Don't leave, I want to talk to you.
So,
All right.
second Tuesday or Wednesday?
Second, you didn't like Wednesday. So do you want to do second Tuesday?
I'll do either.
Second Tuesday. Let's just keep it consistent.
I have a meeting.
Oh, you've got shoot, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Okay, Thursday.
I can
Bill,
easily-
you're out.
I can
Thursday.
easily miss a workshop,
No,
because I'm in Lone Wolf in the damn.
no, no, no,
Hold on
no.
1 second. I think, let me just check something.
All right.
You'll see.
Isn't this fun, guys?
And just a reminder, this would be a general placeholder. When we do have a need for a workshop, we can move them around, but hopefully this would give us
This
a
will be
place
kind of,
9
yes.
times out of 10, rather than,
The
sending out the doodle poll.
that everybody
which is-
waits like a month before we
So this is,
respond.
February 7th.
Oh, Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, February 7th. That'd be fine.
I've got one
No,
other
no,
thing.
February 14th, that would not,
I'm not,
February 15th, is that right? The Thursday, second Thursday?
Second Thursday?
Okay.
Second Thursday or second Tuesday? We're flex.
I will not be here in February.
Tuesday does not work. Tuesday does not work. I could do the 15th, I think.
Okay, Thursday, let's do Thursday.
So the
I will
second
not-
Thursday
If
of
you
the
had
month.
later, just this 1 month,
I know,
I would be better if it was later in the month for me,
okay.
All right, I could do that week of the 19th.
and I'll try. I don't know for sure yet.
So
Well,
why
you-
don't we just say second Thursday for going forward, and then for the workshop in February, which is kind of wild, because we got to get 85 people together, we might be looking at the latter part of that month, okay?
Okay.
But generally, traditionally, does that sound good?
And we ought not make any exceptions to the first Tuesday unless absolutely.
I'm with you. Yeah, school board,
We start messing this stuff up, and you get,
We already got kicked out this.
I have one other piece of new business I'd like for you all to think about. And this has to do with public notice and community meetings. I'd like for us to think about if we have a planned development
Okay, currently, you have to have a community meeting as you start this process. And that's fine. But if we have a planned development meeting, I think, I'd like for us to think about requiring another community meeting once that development that plan has been put together. The reason I say that is we had Casey Sowers with his very involved program, and because of Casey's involvement with his neighbors meeting time and time again, that process worked really well, and we got almost all of the problems on the table and resolved. And so, I'm not suggesting that we require a series of meetings, but when we have a planned development, which is
Big.
which comes together and has a lot of moving pieces, and it's hard to tell what it's going to look like, is to have a community meeting on the plan, the first plan development as it comes together. That just served Mr. Sowers, I thought, extremely well.
Concur.
And it just, so I'd like for us to think about that,
Okay.
only because it was successful.
But I think it's incumbent on the person putting it together too.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of conceptually, the process might be that they have a meeting early on when they have an idea, here's what I'd maybe like to do with the property, get people's input, I like this, I don't like this. Then they work on a plan, then when they have an actual concept plan, something on the ground or on paper that people can look at, then have a plan to react to that.
Yeah, I just don't want to be the ones perceived or be in a position where
We are perceived that,
I'm promoting it, I'm making it, you know?
yeah.
That's for them to do. But it did work well.
Is there anything else?
Oh, Jim, wait, man, you got excited, didn't you?
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Is that the